Hey everyone. In my recent video, I showed how I made a whole bunch of baseboard and door trim by cutting strips out of these 4x8 sheets of MDF. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I thought I would showcase the one particular method I use, which is actually going to be really handy for other projects, especially when you're using extremely heavy MDF like this. As you can tell, a 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch MDF weighs like 7,000 pounds. It's really heavy. And one of the best ways to do it, especially when you have a small shop, is with this guy. It's called the Craig Rip Cut. But a lot of you already know about this. It's a great tool. You can get it at any big box store. You can order it online. It's not expensive at all, and it's very, very handy. It cuts up to about 24 inches, so I think you can get up to about 2 feet of cutting. It's really useful, especially when you're trying to cut like a chunk of the top of your 4x8 sheet. And if you don't have, a huge shop or maybe one of those $20,000 Felder sliding saws, this is a really good alternative. But like I said, a lot of you kind of already know about this. This is one of its more basic functions, and it's really easy. As you can tell, you can cut like 1 or 2 feet pieces off the top quite easily. But this is where it kind of is very useful, but it fails a little bit. When you're cutting strips, you got to try and support the strip somehow. And I tried to make a bunch of things where it would support it, but in the end, it didn't really work great. So you kind of have to hold it with your one hand as you're cutting through. And the main problem with it is, as you're cutting most of the strip, it comes out great. When you get to the top, because you're kind of holding it so it doesn't fall, and even if you do support the end, it's not great. You kind of screw up your measurements at the very tip of the piece. So if you're cutting off the tip, it's not a big deal. And another downfall is when you kind of start getting to the end, you have to kind of clamp it down somehow because the weight kind of moves it over, and then you got to move the clamp and then put the clamp back up. And I mean, for some of us that have these nice big cabinet saws, it's not a big deal because once you get it down to a manageable size, as you can tell, you just kind of start cutting the rest out. But for a lot of people, maybe you have a really big shop or something like that, and it's even at this point, it's not great. But it is very useful to be able to cut multiple strips like this out of, a $40, $50 piece of MDF or plywood. So I thought I would show you kind of how I'm able to cut these perfect strips out of full 8 feet sheets. While some people kind of use, a sacrificial insulation board, which can be, anywhere from $20 to $50. Now you're kind of killing your costs at that point. So if you just take some of your scrap pieces of MDF, or any kind of wood you might have along. And what I did is I kind of extended my workstation here so that I would kind of have what's going to be basically a sacrificial little section that I can kind of run my saw over without kind of sacrificing the quality of the cut, but also kind of like the durability of what I have here. So what I did was I kind of drilled on extra extension pieces on the sides, and then I built this little kind of sacrificial piece. You're basically going to be running a saw over and over it, so don't worry about how it looks in the end. But look, you can support 2 pieces and it'll hold it. But this is where it gets really cool because as you're about to see, you can cut over those pieces and just the little tip of your blade is going to kind of cut it. You're not going to cut right through it because those pieces are a bit thick. But if you see here, you can cut right to the edge, make sure you're keeping the piece, and absolutely nothing happens. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't fall, it doesn't sag, which is really great to make sure your measurements kind of stay, because measuring is pretty much the most important thing when it comes to any kind of carpentry. So using this method, I was able to kind of make sure each corner went perfect, and that's all the damage I did to the piece under. So I was able to run my saw over it and over it at least 40-50 times, and it could actually go even more, and I ended up with perfect strips every time. And the big bonus to this was because you're kind of concentrating on the strip, you don't need to clamp it down because you've got that little extra space to work with, and this worked great. So if you don't have like a big table saw at all, this is a very, very good alternative. And like I said, it works great. Once you kind of find a good spot to keep putting your sheet, you end up actually just cutting over and over the same spot, and then you don't even damage it anymore because now it's got that notch in it. So in the end, you can cut countless numbers of strips out of big sheets of 4x8, ply, MDF, whatever you're using, and save yourself a lot of money because a 4x8 sheet is a lot cheaper to buy than multiple strips. So I hope this really came in handy for you guys. If you like what you saw, feel free to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if you had any questions, please feel free to comment. I really try to get back to as many as I can. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope to see you soon.